Okay, so the part 2 for rotations, we're going to discuss the rules that these follow. So instead of actually rotating the page, if you understand these rules, like we've discussed with the other ones, you can just apply the rule rather than having to actually rotate your graph. Now, this was already on our page. I have this set up, so go ahead and pause and set this up, because then we're going to discuss what is going on. And I did color coordinate it accordingly so that we can match them up. So now that you have it set up, you've paused and you've set it up, we're going to take a look at what has happened between our pre-image and our image for each one of these. Okay? So when we take a look at point A, we're just going to take a look at one point. Point A was at 1, -2. A prime is at -2, 1. So take a look and think to yourself, pause if you'd like to, what has happened between these numbers? Between these points, what has happened? One thing that students will notice first generally is that the x and the y have switched, and that is true. So your x and your y down here, we went from x, y, we now have the y coordinate first and then the x coordinate. And remember, the axes switched. Remember, we had to erase and then we had to rewrite them? That's exactly what has happened. The other thing is that if you take a look at the 1 has now become a negative. Now, we don't say the number became a negative. The -2 didn't change, but the 1 did. We don't say it became a negative. It's going to look like we are saying that, but it changes signs. So we need to look at where the 1 originally was. The 1 was in the x position. So we need to take the x, and we need to note over here, it's going to change signs. So we put that negative sign in front of it. Okay, and we'll see in a little bit what happens. If we look down here, we'll see in a little bit. If it is already negative, well, if you have a negative and negative, it makes a positive. So that negative down here in the rule notes, we're actually just changing its sign. So let's take a look at a double prime. From the image to the pre-image, or sorry, from the pre-image to the image, did they switch places? No. So your x and your y, your 1 still stays there, your 2 still stays there. And we notice that when we switched twice, your x and your y axes were still in the same place. So you still have your x and your y in the same exact place. But what happened to your x coordinate? It went negative. So we say it changed signs. So we put a little negative sign in front of the x, saying we're going to change the sign of the x. This is where I was telling you, okay, well, it was negative, now it's positive. We don't put a plus for positive. We still put a notation of we're going to change the sign of the y. So it goes from xy to -x, -y. When you take a negative and you put another negative in front of it, it makes a positive. Okay, so that's what's happened between A and A double prime. So all you do is you take the 2 coordinates, you change the sign of both of them if it's a 180-degree rotation. Lastly, your 270 degrees clockwise, also known as your 90 degrees counterclockwise. We take a look, and we should start picking up on something that happened with the 90 degrees clockwise. The x and the y have switched places again. Okay, so instead of the 1 and the -2, the 2's first, then the 1. So we have our y first, then our x. So we're going to take those numbers and we're going to switch them. But also, one of them changed signs. Which one changed sign? Look over here at the original. Was it the x or the y that changed? It was the y that changed. It went from a -2 to a +2. So that y needs a notation of let's change the sign. So you could follow these rules instead. For example, if I tell you that we have point D, I'm going to completely make something up, is at -4, -8. And let's say we're going to do we'll do a 270-degree clockwise rotation. What is this going to become? Well, it was at -4, -8, so we look up here and say, okay, what happened? First, we're going to switch the numbers, and then which one's going to change signs? The y. So what I normally do is I just put the numbers first without negatives or anything, look over here and say, okay, the y changed to a positive, so the 8's going to stay positive, but the x does not change. So we're going to leave that as a -4. With practice, you could start using these rules. Guys, do not hesitate to cut out the graph paper, print out the PDFs, rotate the page. If that's easiest for you, please, whatever is easiest for you, but these are 2 different ways that you can use your rotations.